What's up YouTube? In this video I'm going to show you how to replace the valve cover gasket along with the spark plug seals in this R53 Mini Cooper S. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and stick around. You're going to want to watch this whole video. No matter which Mini Cooper you work on, check out my Facebook group. It's called Mini Cooper DIY. I'll put a link to that in the description, or you can just go to Facebook and type Mini Cooper DIY in the search bar and you can get to it that way. Let's get to the video. Okay, the first step is you're going to remove these 4 bolts off your intercooler shroud, and it is a T30 Torx bit. Let's go ahead and take the bolts out. Remember, the two long bolts are the ones that go in the back of the intercooler shroud. Just go ahead and remove your intercooler shroud and set it aside. Next up, I'm going to remove the intercooler shroud brackets. There's 4 8mm bolts. Some people just take 2 out and then move these to the side. I like to take them all the way off so they're not in my way. Okay, now you're back to your T30. You're going to remove these 2 T30s and these 2 T30s. Now you can either choose to leave this in or take it out. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to leave the one in on this side because it's in there pretty good. But your intercooler should just pop out at this point. Okay, so next up, I'm going to take off these intercooler brackets on the bottom. Let me get a better shot. But there's 3 bolts, 8mm bolts on this one, and there's 2 8mm bolts on this one. You're going to need a 1/4 inch drive 8mm with the, I'm using a 3/8 right here, but it steps down into a 1/4 inch right here, just so that it'll reach back there from the back. If you do it with a 1/4 inch, you won't be able to get it on the bolt. So that's the way you got to do it, but I'll get you a better shot at it right now. Okay, right here you can see this bolt and this bolt, and then right next to this bolt over this way, but underneath this ledge right here, there's another 8mm, and that's the one that's a little bit harder to get to. But if you slide your 8mm on the 1/4 inch extension, you should be able to get it out just like that. Try not to drop it. I use a pen magnet and I put it on the bolt when I'm taking it out, just so I don't drop it. Then fish it out that way. The other 2 bolts are much easier to get to, so I just take them out real quick. You don't have to remove them all the way. Just pull them out, or just loosen them. Then the intercooler bracket on this side, it's just these 2 bolts right on the top. Super easy to get to. Still 8mm. Your PCV line does connect to this bracket, so you got to pop that off so that you can fish your bracket without dropping your bolts out from around this wire. That comes out pretty easy. Okay, next I'm going to disconnect the PCV hoses from the valve cover. There's one right here. Just pull it off. Yours might not come off that easy. I've had mine off recently, so it came off real easy. And then come over to the other side and pull this one off. I'll show you how to do that right now. Okay, on your PCV hose, you'll see this clamp right here. You can just use regular pliers to pull that back, but I find it much easier to use these kind of pliers. And I'll put a link to these. They're called hose clamp pliers. I'll put a link to them in the description. What's good about them, when you squeeze them on, they lock into place. I'm doing this with one hand, so it might not work as good as intended. But when you squeeze it, you can actually let go of the pliers. See, my hand's off the plier. and it keeps the clamp pulled. So you can, it's a lot easier to pull the clamp off. I'll put a link to these in the description where you can get those. So with the pliers on there, just go ahead and pull the clamp back as far as you can. And release the pliers by pressing the little button on the side. Now to remove the hose from the PCV valve, or from the valve cover itself, is a little bit difficult. This one's kind of tight. Like I said, I've had mine off recently. I just did my timing chain. If you need to do a timing chain, that video is the last video I did before this one. But go ahead and pry this off. The way I did it was I just used a screwdriver and I just pried it up against the valve cover a little bit, being very careful not to crack the valve cover, and pried on it until it slid off like that. But like I said, mine's been off recently and it actually wasn't all the way on just now. But when it's all the way on, you just have to do what I just did more times than I just showed you. Just keep going over and over until it pops off. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and remove the coil packs, or the coils wires off of my spark plugs. Some people use tools. I just grab them and pull them out by hand. I've never had any issue. Okay, next, remove this plug off the back of your coil pack. You're gonna need a screwdriver, and you can see this red clip right here. You need to pry that out. You can do it from the back. Just pop it forward. You'll see it slide out a little bit like that, and then you can just pop it forward. And then once you've got that popped forward like that, there is a button. Let's see if I can show it to you. Move this out of the way. On the back of the plug, right here, where my thumb is, right here, press down right there and pull back, and the plug will come out. I'm doing this with one hand, so I might not be able to do it, but press on right there, and if you put your screwdriver right in here, you can gently, very gently, pry this out, which is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to need both hands to do it. So pressing that button that I just showed you, take your flathead screwdriver and put it in that little crack that I just showed you, and very gently pry it back. And if it doesn't go easy, you're not pressing the button hard enough, so don't pry harder, press the button harder. And that comes off. Okay, next we're going to remove these little covers off of this 8mm stud or bolt right here. You just pull straight up and it comes out of the way. And there's another one underneath it. And it just covers up this one 8mm bolt that goes to your valve cover. It's the one furthest out this way. And at this point, if you haven't done it already, I would take some silicone spray. I used WD-40. I sprayed, and I did it last night, I sprayed every single bolt on my valve cover. Let it sit for at least 10 minutes before you take these bolts out. And if they're hard to take out at all, spray some more and let it sit longer, because you don't want these to strip. And you want to use a 6-point 8mm deep socket. If you use a 12-point, what'll happen is they're a lot easier to strip. 6-point will definitely take it off, and also use a high quality one that fits very well. And if you do end up rounding one, don't really worry about it that much. Just go down to a 7, put it on there, hammer it on, and take it off that way and replace the bolt. Also on the back side of the valve cover, by where you put the oil in, there's another one of these cover things over top of a bolt. You got to pull that off to get to the bolt right here. Then just go ahead and from the outsides working in, go ahead and loosen them all. There's another one of those covers right here, so I can pull this all the way out of the way. Okay, at this point, you should be able to remove your valve cover. If it doesn't come off easily, you might have to gently pry it with a flathead screwdriver. now I'm going to replace the valve cover gasket and the spark plug seals. I'm just going to use a pick tool to pull the valve cover gasket out. Okay, now go ahead and remove the spark plug seals if you're going to replace these. If not, obviously don't remove them. They're pretty hard to get off, but I would suggest replacing them since you're already this far into the project. Okay, mine are not having a good time coming out, so what I found, if I pull the center out, pull this stuff out with a pair of pliers, if I can get a grip on the outside, there seems to be a pretty hardened ring on the outside. If you can get a grip on that, you can get it to move. And once you get it to move, you can get some space and pull it out. Like that. So do that on all four, then we'll go to the next step. Now take your new seals, just put them in the hole, press them in. Okay, to install these, I went and grabbed my Maddox bearing race and steel set. I'm using the 50mm one. I got this from Harbor Freight. It's super cheap and it works really good. Just put it on there and press down. You could do this with just your bare hand too if you feel inclined. I got the first one in just my bare hand, but this next one just didn't want to go in as easy. You can actually feel when these seat too, it just goes in and stops. Okay, now to install this part of the gasket, find this loop right here that goes over the camshaft. And that way there's no way to really put it in wrong. Just start there. And just get it a little bit into the groove on the first pass, then go around it again with your hands on the second pass, and then make sure it's fully seated. This actually goes in pretty easy. And once you have it seated like that, make sure to go around it a third time and just make sure that it is 100% in every single spot seated all the way, because you're not going to use any type of RTV or anything like that. You're just going to put the valve cover back on. And if you're not sure, go over it again, but I'm sure mine's sealed. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put the valve cover back on. Okay, now just make sure everything's out of the way. Grab your valve cover, put it back on. Make sure you're not pinching any wires as you're putting it down. This cam position sensor wire was just caught under there, so make sure none of your other wires are under there either. Go ahead and press that in so it's seated like that. Okay, now I'm going to go around from the inside out. And I'm just going to hand tighten, not even that tight, just snug down these 8mm bolts. You just want to make sure the valve cover is pretty seated. I'm only going to get them lightly tightened the first pass, and I'll probably go a second pass to get them seated, and then a third pass to make sure they're snug. They only tighten down to 9 foot-pounds, so you don't got to get them that tight. Okay, now I'm going to go around and I'm just going to snug them down a little bit, just to make sure the valve cover is seated, which I think it is. Alright, now that I'm confident that my valve cover is seated, I'm going to go ahead and snug all the bolts down from the inside out. And again, Torx spec is only 9 pounds, so it's not that much. I just hold my ratchet real close like this and just tighten it like that so I don't over tighten them. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and put the spark plugs back in. They're numbered on both the coil pack and the valve cover. But if your valve cover is not numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4. If your coil pack isn't numbered for some reason, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Goes around like a U this way. So take number 1, put it in the hole. Number 2, put it in the hole. Find number 3. That one in, and put number 4 in, make sure there's not oil on it. Then just go ahead and press them in. You'll hear a click when they go in. Now take this clip that you untook from your coil pack, put that back in. Now don't forget that red tab, press it back in that way to lock it in. Then also the 2 tabs that go over top of the studs, make sure you put those on. Keeps your wire off of the engine. Keeps it heat away from it. Do the same on the other one over here that you took off. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this first intercooler bracket back on. Remember not to over tighten those because they are going into aluminum. Now if you're not comfortable leaving all 3 bolts in, like I'm probably going to do right now, take them out and put them in with using a pin magnet. It'll make it pretty easy. I'm just going to put it in like this. I'm just going to get the harder bolt, the bottom bolt first. Actually, I'm going to get the one on the top first just so it holds it into place. Okay, at this point, you can go ahead and put your PCV hose back in this bracket and then put it on your line right here. Slides on pretty easy. I'm going to use some CRC heavy duty silicone spray. I just got this at Walmart. And I'm going to spray this. Let's see what I'm doing. The tube that this goes onto, the silicone. And that should help me slide it on. And just shake it up and down. And just keep, silicone dries pretty quick. And just keep sliding it on. There you go. And once that's on, go ahead and take your hose clamp pliers. Put that clamp back on. Okay, so now I'm going to install the intercooler. The big opening goes towards the left side of the engine bay. These bolts go towards the front of the engine bay, facing down. If you have aftermarket boots, it's a little bit harder to install, but I think it's worth it. You just want to press it as far back this way as you can to get this other one started. Okay, I had to move my camera out of the way to pop that in there, but basically push your intercooler back that way as far as you can. Figure out how to get this in. I pried mine out with the screwdriver, popped it in. Yours is going to be different because you have different intercooler boots. If you already have aftermarket intercooler boots, you already know how to put your intercooler on. So now I'm going to go ahead and put these on, but I'm not going to tighten them all the way yet. The reason I'm not tightening these on is because when I'm going to test fit the intercooler shroud, make sure all the bolts line up before I tighten these. But you definitely have to tighten these two right here before you tighten your intercooler shroud, because obviously you'll see you can't tighten them any other time. Next, I'm going to install these intercooler shroud bolts, or brackets. I'm just going to put these bolts in. And I can already see that I have to push my intercooler this way slightly just to get this bracket to line up, just so I can get these bolts in. So that's another reason not to tighten those. Now just test fit, make sure if I line everything up. Seems like everything's gonna work. So now go ahead and tighten down these brackets to T30 Torx. Then go ahead and put your intercooler shroud on. Oops, put it on the right way. Long bolts go in the back, and the short bolts go in the front. I put a link to that valve cover gasket in the description of this video. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, give it a thumbs down. Please hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next video.